go. Okay, so why don't we just get into it? And we're talking about doing product analytics for Atlassian Marketplace partners. Very niche conversation here, but I thought it would be really cool to have this conversation and talk about, our past lives, our past selves. What would we want to know when building an app in the Atlassian Marketplace that we know now? And what would you teach yourself, I think, what did we say, 5 years ago? Something like that. But, if you're building an app in the Atlassian Marketplace and you're not doing product analytics yet, what would you, Simon, tell yourself if you were just getting going today?
I think product analytics, there are really two key drivers within the marketplace, and the two that we focus on. First is understanding how your trial accounts are going and whether they're on track to convert. Are they understanding the value that your product delivers? And the second one is understanding the overall health of your existing customers. Are they engaging with the product more? Are they sort of in a steady state, or are they declining? Because one of the things that we've sort of seen time and again, even before we're in the marketplace, is that you can log into an account and you can tell whether that account is, or see an account and you can see whether it's a hive of activity or whether it's tumbleweeds and there's just no one sort of using it. But the difficulty that we've seen sort of over the years is that you can't do that at scale. As a support operator, you might see that account, but particularly in the Atlassian Marketplace where you've got hundreds or thousands of customers, and by customers, we're talking about the account here, not individual users, there's no way that you can do that at scale. And there are just so many missed opportunities to sort of help people see the value through the trials or to kind of understand what new value delivered through new features. And so what product analytics allows you to do is to really reach out to those people and understand how they're using it and making sure that they understand the value that you can deliver. And you can do that at scale, depending on how you align your tech stack and what tools you use. But there are some messaging tools, there's analytics tools that can help you deliver that value to
So I'm going to just stop you there and dig into the trials thing, right? Like, so something that we worked a lot on at Proforma was understanding what those numbers were month on month. We knew after a certain amount of time that we knew that if we got X number of trials, that our conversion rate was such that we felt good about the future of the company. Basically, you kind of knew what the next month was going to look like, the next quarter, whatever. But you mentioned the opportunities. Can you unpack that a little bit? Just like what kind of opportunities? So if someone's looking at their support queue today, like what kind of opportunities are you looking for?
Are we focusing on trials or on customers?
Let's talk trials for now.
Yep. So I think it's less on so the question is if you've already got a conversion rate, let's say it's a 20% conversion rate sort of for your trials. For me, I look at that and go, well, why are 80% of your trials are not seeing the value of your product? And a lot of that sort of comes down to, and if you can go into individual accounts or if you can sort of analyze an individual account, you'll see that maybe they've sort of clicked on, for us, the form builder. It's like, yeah, maybe they got to the form builder or the form, or maybe they didn't. So that's one of the key features that we need to drive people to. So I think what product analytics gives you in that trial context is the ability to understand what your customers or prospective customers are seeing and what they're not seeing, so that you can be much more targeted in how you reach out to them. So whether that's through sort of onboarding messaging, whether it's sort of sending them follow-up emails, to make sure that everyone talks about getting to the aha moment, but how do you actually measure how far along that journey they've got to and what they're missing and also what they've seen, so that you're not sort of hammering something that they already know about, but you're drawing them sort of further into that or closer to that aha moment and understanding what the value is. Because, yeah, at 20% conversion, the opportunity there, I'd be saying, well, look, how can you optimize that? How can you get that to 30 or 40%? And how can you do that at scale? Because you can't run 100 demo calls, individual demo calls a week to show people what the product can do. And so for me, product analytics gives you that opportunity to reach out to each of those sort of trial customers, understand where they're at. Also, it's important to know that product analytics isn't just about driving messaging. Also, you can use product analytics to actually get out of the way. Because if you've got a customer that's on a straight line from install to conversion, you want to turn the messaging down. They're already going to convert. They clearly understand what the value is, and you don't want to annoy them. You don't want to give them a reason not to use your product by putting endless pop-ups or product tours in there. Conversely, if you've got a trial account that's going well, they've seen some of the value sort of or features that you offer, but they haven't seen them all, and they're into the second half of their 30-day trial, they're the ones that you do want to put into a sequence. You do want to reach out to, whether it's email or in-app, offer a demo call to make sure that they actually understand the value. So that's what product analytics unlocks in that trial context.
And the other side, maybe not the other side, but further down the track, is you mentioned that like the health of existing customers, and which I think something that we've talked a lot about on this channel is, if you've got a small team, where do you focus? And it comes up often, especially when we're talking like marketplace. A majority of the company companies aren't huge teams, so you've got limited time. Do you basically try to keep the customers that you have, or do you try to convert more? So it's two parts of the equation, but also very important, and looking at that health of existing accounts. And I think just what I would say here is that, like, we'll underscore why these are important, but then also I'd like to move us into how to actually implement this, because I think the sales pitch here is you should be doing pay attention to your product data. So we'll get through the why and then tell you how, I guess.
Well, on to that point about current customers, it's absolutely essential. Any number of ratios will say it's cheaper to keep a customer than to acquire a new customer. And so, but most people are completely blind, particularly in the marketplace, because of that, as I was saying, respect for privacy and for the way Atlassian would like partners to interact with customers. It can be incredibly difficult to know how your individual accounts are going. And really, the only sort of noise or signals that you can get are through support emails at the moment, if you're not doing product analytics. And that can be a lagging indicator or absolutely no indicator, because someone might just sort of pack up and leave without interacting with you at all. Whereas what product analytics can give you is the ability just to keep your finger on the pulse of all of your customers. And most importantly, what you're looking for is change, particularly negative change. So most products, Proforma was a great example. There'll be a hive of activity sort of when it first installed, people are building forms, configuring them, and then it really went into steady state. And so we would expect 50, 100, or maybe 500 forms to be created each week or month, depending on the size of the customer. But you'd very quickly get a sense of what's healthy. And it's only when that turns sort of negative and that sort of overall usage starts to drop that we would want to step in. And unless you've got product analytics running, you've really got no sense as to who's at risk of churning or whether that customer's healthy or not.
So it's like the health of your business, right? And I think, if we were to talk to Derek, who founded Sherlock, I think that's one of his big things is like, this is the lifeblood of your business. So paying attention to this and understanding it is really important. And I agree with that. Can we talk about how do you go about implementing this? And you and I were talking about this before we hit record here, that there's got some recommendations as far as tools go, but then also, again, talking about being in the marketplace, being on someone else's platform, i.e. Atlassian, privacy concerns, all that sort of stuff. I know it comes up often in these conversations. So how do you get started?
Well, we'll run through in multiple sessions the exact kind of implementation of the different elements of product analytics. But to start with, the key tool I would recommend you do is, adopt is a customer data platform. And really, when you're looking at this, you're looking at either Segment or RudderStack. And what these CDPs do, particularly Segment, is it's a single source that you can send all of your product analytics data to, and then Segment will take the job of sort of distributing that to whatever tool suite you want to use, whether that's Intercom, whether it's MailChimp, even Amplitude or other tools. But Segment and RudderStack make it really easy to swap tools in and out, because it's one data stream from your product to Segment, and then from Segment to whatever tool you want. And we've used Segment now for 15 odd years in the various tools that we worked with. RudderStack is a sort of newer, there are open source versions of it, but they essentially do the same thing. So both of those tools are the key for us in terms of starting to build your sort of product analytics. And within that, there are three essentially different types of data that you're going to send. One is the individual event data. So did someone click the download button or the export button or the create new form button? The other one is the identify call, which is to identify individual users within the system. And then there's a group call. And a group really is to link a particular user to a particular account. And really, in the Atlassian Marketplace, users matter because they're the ones interacting with your product, but it's really that account and the health of that account that you want to track. And the specific details of how to implement that and your tracking scheme and all of that we'll cover later. But just have a look at Segment, have a look at RudderStack. They've got some great resources to get you going on that journey. But today we'd like to just cover off some of the sort of broad approaches and a couple of key tips that we acquired over time. I won't say trial and error.
So speaking of lessons learned, and then also some of the challenges that you face being in the marketplace, privacy is a big one. And I think that's the first thing that comes up in pretty much every conversation that we have is how do you responsibly handle privacy as a marketplace vendor?
Well, the first one with the marketplace vendor is do not log or do not track user-generated content. Just don't do it.
Can you define that? What do you mean by user-generated content, just to be clear?
User-generated content is anything that your users type into either directly into your product or that you can acquire through or that they've entered into Jira or to Confluence and that you might have access to. So to that extent, it's actually even the project key in the URL for a Jira project. Obviously, it would be the sort of the issue summary or the sort of the data that's flowing through your system. None of that should go anywhere near your analytics tools, because it's just all too easy to send that through Segment. You could have that data kind of leak into any number of other tools, and
Right.
it's a nightmare. So be very cautious with what you do, including your product analytics. But it's not that hard to get right.
Thankfully, yeah.
Thankfully.
Yeah. And so, and that's something worth talking about too, I think, because that's changed since the Proforma days, right? Where I think it took a lot more, I don't know, elbow grease to get that done and do it right than it does today. So Segment has made that a bit easier. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah. So when you're looking at capturing this data, there are two ways to do it. And you'll probably use a mixture of both. One is from the back end, where you're sending these events and this information directly from your application up to the Segment servers directly. And that's in some ways easier because you have absolute control over what information Segment sees. You can make sure there's no UGC, you can make sure that there's no email addresses or PI information being sent. But quite often, you will want to track sort of events from the front end. So, is a user clicking on buttons? Are they kind of, scrolling through some different elements? And it's in the front end that there are more opportunities to leak UGC or PI information. And so, when we implemented it, we used to have like a really sort of detailed workaround. Every event that we logged from the front end actually went via, a Lambda, so we could strip out all the information and then we'd pass it on to Segment. Fortunately, Segment's sort of grown over the years, and you can now use their front end library. And with a couple of tweaks, you can rip out things like the IP address. You can scrub that bit. The IP address is always a bit funny, but Segment's made it a lot easier. So now you can strip out things like the page title, any search terms. You can not send at least tell it not to log the URL of the page that you're on. And most importantly, particularly if you're a Connect app, you can tell it not to log the referrer, because the referrer, and this is one of those things where I said it's too easy to distribute sensitive information. The referrer quite often contains a JWT token. And if you know anything about JWT tokens, they're essentially it's a security risk to have that logged really anywhere, because if someone can get real-time access to it, that could effectively grant them access to your customers' instances. So have a look at the code snippet that we've got on the website about how not to log that information if you're using the Segment front end.
Which thankfully has been made a lot easier that way. And so big thing there. Thank you for clarifying that. And I think just really to underscore that UGC thing is anything that people are entering into your products, right? Like that should not go anywhere else. I think that's just
I think we can kind of build on that, because sort of at scale, where we care about accounts, or you should care about the overall health of account, because Jira administrators or Confluence users are going to come and go. It's just sort of by the very nature. We're in the B2B game, we're not in the B2C game. And so another area that's I think really important is absolutely limit that personal information that you're sending through to your analytics tools and to your messaging tools. I, on the whole, don't think there's any reason to be sending things like the email addresses of individual users through analytics. Yes, you need to be able to identify individual users because you're going to log what events they do. And that's incredibly useful, because when you go to look at an account, if Apple's using your product, you want to know who are the top 5 users of that product. But, having their Atlassian ID number is enough. You don't need to know their name. You don't need to know their email address in analytics tools that you're running, because we're B2B. You want to know the health of the account, not really. You shouldn't be caring at scale about the actions of individual users and trying to reach out to them individually. So definitely don't send, in my opinion, there's no reason to be sending personal information like names or email addresses through these tools.
Are there any other, I don't know, like hurdles or boogeymen to look for when setting this up?
I think particularly in Atlassian, where you're dealing with sophisticated enterprise customers, they want control. So one of the first thing we did when we did implement analytics into Proforma is we gave our customers the ability to turn it off. So there was just an option in the admin screen, and they could say, no, I don't want analytics. And so the user had control. Key thing, make sure you log the fact that they turn it off, because otherwise you'll have a whole lot of accounts that exist that are running dark. So that's one event, even when they're turning it off, just to log that fact. But give your customers the ability to control what information is sent, because you will have, particularly as more enterprise move from behind the firewall onto Atlassian cloud products, they will want absolute certainty as to what information can leave their walled garden. So build that in. We were a little cheeky, I will say. because we had 2 versions of the product. We had the free version, and we disabled the ability to turn analytics off. I mean, it was one of those drivers to kind of encourage people that if they cared about that, they could pay for it. But in the free version, and also arguably in your trial account, you do want to understand whether people are seeing the value of your product, and you want to help them realize what value you can deliver. So I think there's certainly a place for analytics. Again, it's not being evil. It's about helping people understand what is the value that you deliver today. Can they access it? Have they seen it? Also, analytics can help you ensure that customers continue to see the new value, those new features that you continue to deliver. So analytics isn't evil. It's just a great way for you to sort of help your customers understand what value your products deliver.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good point, especially as we stare down the barrel of app additions and those kind of changes where you can start to think about how you're structuring your pricing and what your offers are. I don't see any reason why you couldn't or shouldn't, add that as a sort of monetization play for your products, right? Where it's like, yep, you're on trial. We're just going to, again, you're not tracking UGC. Like if you're not pulling in email addresses and you're not doing anything that you shouldn't be doing anyway, I don't think there's much harm. But yeah, giving them the opportunity to opt out is one of those things that it's a lever for you to pull, right? So why not consider that? And I don't think there's anything evil about it.
I think it's actually, winding back, one of the tips that we had, one of the questions people have, like, well, why wouldn't you send everything from the back end in terms of logging all of these analytics data? The reason that we sent 95% of our analytics data through the front end is for transparency, because we wanted to be able to tell our customers, you can see the data that we're sending. Like there's nothing, except for this, you can see all the data going through the front end. So they could be, again, yeah, so we were transparent about what information was leaving the system and they could see it. The other thing that we did when we implemented it is just add it to our trust center. We added sample payloads of the type of information that we captured so that if customers really wanted to dive into it and understand what we were doing, one, they could refer to our privacy policy and understand what tools were in our tech stack. But secondly, they could actually see the payload and see what information we were capturing and more importantly, what information we weren't capturing. So that can be another tip to help build, along with the ability to actually turn it off. That, I believe, went a long way to us sort of building trust with our customers.
Which I think is really the underlying thing here, right? Is that they need to trust that you're not abusing the data that they're giving you and by using your product. Oh, look, I think we might wrap it up there so we don't go on for too long, but there is a guide on the website. So Simon has put together what we're calling the comprehensive guide to implementing analytics in the Atlassian Marketplace, including
maybe we should add starting. Comprehensive guide to starting your own.
This is where you start. And yes, so we're going to offer that up on the website. You can come check it out at accoil.com. We'll have that there for you, or you can send us a note directly. But yeah, we'll have that. It does have examples of how we've managed this in the past, why implement analytics, how to implement those analytics, including some of the tools. And yeah, so other things that are just stood out to me are give customers the option to turn that off, and then also add those sample payloads to your trust center. I think that's a really cool way of just demonstrating that you're an open company and building that trust. So anything else to close us out with, Simon?
Product analytics, if you don't have it, you need it. It's the easiest way that you can help your customers and also your business thrive.
Cool. All right.